followed by the pound sign.
After the tone, please state your name.
Welcome to the STEM Equity Pipeline webinar, Spark, Talented Minority Girls' Interest in Engineering, the FREE Project, Female Recruits Explore Engineering. This is Mimi Lufkin, the CEO of NAEP, and welcome to this webinar. At the beginning here, I'm going to give a few opening statements about the STEM Equity Pipeline Project, just so that you all understand where the resources are coming from to support this work, and also the work of the National Alliance for Partnerships in Equity Education Foundation. We have a small grant from the National Science Foundation under the Human Resources Directorate Gender in Science and Engineering Program. It's an extension services grant that's providing us with resources to conduct this webinar, as well as the work that we're doing with the states around professional development. The goals of the STEM Equity Pipeline Project are to build the capacity of the formal education community, basically focusing on professional development and the integration of gender equity into STEM teacher professional development. The second goal of the project is focused around connecting that work to existing accountability systems, and we are particularly interested in how this work might affect the performance of schools on the career and technical education performance measure regarding increasing participation and completion of students in non-traditional career and tech ed. And lastly, of course, we want to broaden the commitment to gender equity in STEM education across the country. We're doing this by conducting professional development, by conducting teacher training around our data-driven decision-making institutional change model. We also provide consulting and technical assistance to states and local educational agencies where we're working. And we have a virtual web-based professional learning community that includes things like today's webinar. All of the webinars that we've conducted over the last 4 years have been archived and are available on the STEM Equity Pipeline website, so I encourage you to go there and take a look at some of the other great pieces we've done previous to this. And lastly, when the project is completed in its 5th year, we will be developing an online resource tool for others to replicate the work that we've been doing through the STEM Equity Pipeline Project, and it will include a best practices piece. So for those of you listening, you might be wondering how you can participate on your state team if you're from California, Georgia, Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota, Missouri, Ohio, Oklahoma, New Hampshire, Texas, or Wisconsin. Those are the 11 states that are currently participating where we're actually doing work in those states. And if you go to the STEM Equity Pipeline website and click on the state team menu, you'll be able to find out who your state contact is, and I'd encourage you to contact them and find out how you can get involved in the work going on within the state. But certainly, we encourage you to continue to participate in the virtual learning community by going to the STEM Equity Pipeline website and, of course, any future webinars that we have coming up. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our presenter today. Dr. Monica Bruning is the Senior Research Associate and Lecturer in the Educational Leadership and Policy program in the Community College Leadership Program of the College of Human Sciences at Iowa State University. Much of Monica's work focuses on broadening participation of underrepresented groups in STEM, and her background includes 18 years working in the colleges of engineering at Iowa State and also in the state of Montana. Monica is the lead principal investigator of the FREE Project. And Monica, I'm looking forward to hearing about your work and learning more about the FREE Project. Take it away.
Well, thank you, Mimi and Greg and Freda for organizing this and the opportunity to share what started as a research project and turned into an absolutely incredible intervention, and I'm so happy to be able to be with the group today and share what we did with the hopes of continuing to impact the number of underrepresented students that consider engineering as a career option and enter into it. So with that, just a little bit of background of the project. It was really the idea for the FREE Project started when I was working in college admissions and actually a PhD candidate at the same time, and was just mystified by the fact that more girls weren't choosing the exciting and truly opportunistic field of engineering as a career choice. And through that dissertation work, what I learned was that the answer was actually even more simple and actually more complex than I had initially imagined. Now, 10 years later, the FREE project is actually a longitudinal study. We started with the girls in high school, their sophomore year, and now we are, and the funding has continued, and we are following the young women into college as they chose their career fields, and I'll share with you a little bit about what happened there. And what we're working to understand are how the influencers and decisions that young women make as they consider engineering as a career option, and how those experiences evolve on their pathways to and through college in preparation for the world of work. This specific webinar will be focusing on the toolkit, or what turned out to be the intervention piece of the research when we set out to better understand how young women explored the career option of engineering. At the onset of the project, the research team was committed to involving a diverse population, diverse in terms of ethnic, socioeconomic, and geographic diversity, hence the title of this webinar, Sparking the Interests of Talented Minority Girls to Consider Engineering as a Career Option. The research team, or the project coordinators, also came from very diverse backgrounds. Margaret Eisenhart is book, Educated in Romance, written in 1990, provided the initial framework for the project. Margaret and Dorothy Holland's work in the late 1980s investigated why young college women with high career aspirations upon entering college made different choices and adjusted their career goals during college. Some of you may recall the old saying, go to college to get your MRS degree. Well, that's what they were, in essence, looking into, and the women that entering STEM fields were not persisting, and that's what their initial work looked at. Margaret is an educational anthropologist from the University of Colorado and has done a lot of work in the area of girls and STEM education. Monica Bruning, was a former college admissions director and enrollment services administrator for 20 years. So with that experience, I also worked in colleges, as Mimi mentioned, of technology and engineering, and my work focuses on female adolescent career exploration and transition into STEM programs of study, as well as how young people transition into college environments. And the FREE project is actually, in its early stages, was a product of my dissertation. Jill Bizajaninski is at the university, at Ohio State University, and she heads up the Women's Studies program there. And her expertise is in the area of girl culture and social network environments, as well as women in STEM. And through this project also, you can see on the list the number of graduate students who brought their expertise, energy, and passion for working with teenage girls to the project, and we truly are indebted to their contributions in various ways to the project. The project we basically managed with about a 6-to-1 staff to girls ratio, and I say staff, it was a research project that was a participatory action research project. So the girls and the researchers co-researched the questions that I'll share with you in a minute. And our diverse background certainly led us to diverse interpretations of the data, and then that I will be sharing with you today, in addition to what the toolkit is, and then what some of the outcomes that could be expected from implementing a program such as this. So a little bit about the who were the girls. The study started out that really put together the toolkit, designed it. They were a population of about 131 girls from the states of Ohio, Colorado, and Iowa. To be involved in the research project, the girls needed to be high achieving, and the definition of high achieving would be those that were pursuing a college preparatory curriculum in high school and we're passing, had at least a 2.5 grade point average in those courses. And the girls, we also focused, as I mentioned earlier, on diverse population, and in fact, 38% of the girls were from Caucasian backgrounds, 37% were from Hispanic backgrounds, and 12% African American. And we had about 5% Asian and Native American young women in our study, and those who helped create the toolkit. We also had geographic diversity. 43% were from urban areas, and equal numbers were from rural and suburban areas, so a nice cross-section there. And 2/3 of the girls were from lower socioeconomic families. They qualified for free or reduced lunches, and that's how we defined lower socioeconomic. In this project, also, the states were quite diverse. We had in terms of the schools that participated in the project, we had a magnet school for science and technology. We had two rural schools, and we had urban schools as well as a couple schools in the metropolitan areas. So nice cross-section with different structures and systems, and certainly that brought a wealth of richness to the data and the information that I'm going to share with you today. The research questions were really what drove the, ooh, that's going fast. Let's see. I'm going to go back here. That went really fast. I don't know how to, sorry about that. I'm going to read the questions. Usually they come on in a slower mode, but the research questions that guided our research project, and then of course the development of this toolkit, was first of all, what do young girls want to know about engineering? And then how does the prospect of engineering fit into the girls' lives? And thirdly, how does social positioning, or their socioeconomic, their first generation, immigrant, geographic, or racial ethnic status affect their perspectives on engineering? And lastly, how and why do interests change over time? So those were the questions that drove our research, which then resulted in this toolkit that we're going to look at. Some major findings with the research as following the girls as they were sophomores in high school. They started as sophomores in high school in January of their sophomore year, and we chose that age to look at because their sophomore year, 15, 16 years of age, is typically when young people start a period in the literature on career development. Their ideas about the world of work and their aptitudes and skills and abilities start to crystallize, where they start to look at the world of work in more realistic ways. The ideas of being a ballerina or a football star or a rock and roll singer start to get more realistic, and maybe they look at other things that they may pursue based on their interests. And so that was the age when we started the study, and certainly we found the theory to really be accurate because, or work in this case, because girls really were starting to want to think about college and what were they going to major in college, and so the timing of it was very, very good. We started the study, as you can see on this slide, with 131 girls in January, and in order to be selected for the study, as I mentioned earlier, to be in a college prep curriculum, they also could not be from families that had engineers, their mother or father were an engineer, or extended family members. So we wanted to work with a group who didn't know about engineering or have preconceived notions about it, and were willing to consider it as a career option, therefore researching it, spending time researching it to better understand it so they could make a decision about whether it was right for them or not. And that's what constituted our research questions, is how did they come to know engineering, what did they come to know about it, and then what decisions did they make. What was amazing on this chart that you're seeing is the number of girls that were retained in the study 18 months after it started. And if you think about high school students and their time, once they get those car keys or are able to drive, all of a sudden the world opens up to them and their time becomes very, very precious and quite filled, actually. And so what was amazing with this study was that girls, 56% of them, their senior year, were still active in the study. And given the sporting events, the arts that they were in, and of course jobs and other responsibilities, the fact that this was an optional thing that they could opt out at any time, and we were exploring engineering, 56% of them stuck with the project, and that was amazing. I do want to point out here with the Iowa group, we had a lower number retained, and this is an important factor to highlight because it speaks to how we structured it. And in Iowa, one of our groups was in a metropolitan area, and it was a school district that had 5 schools. And so we offered the project to all 5 schools, though we met in one school. So the girls were traveling from 4 different schools to meet on a monthly basis in one school. And what we found in the general findings was how important that community was. And in this setting, in this site that was more decentralized, where girls were from different schools, we were not able to accomplish that sense of community and that commitment and support of one another. And that really led in that site to lower retention, which is why ours in Iowa was much lower because of solely that site, because girls were coming from different high schools and they didn't have the connections with the other girls. And in the Colorado and Ohio sites, they were in one school and they were able to develop those closer relationships. So something that's important as we consider scaling up this project or doing it in other places, how important those sites, school-specific and not a decentralized structure is in terms of the retention. Then another piece of this project, which is why we actually developed the toolkit and realized that, wow, we are really onto something here, is looking at the retention in college. And actually, first of all, the number of girls that chose engineering as a career option, 22% ended up majoring in engineering in college. And this is a group that came from, majority were first-generation college students. None of them knew what engineering was. And so the fact that 22% of that group ended up majoring in engineering in college is quite amazing. And in fact, another 37% enrolled in science, technology, or math fields. So a total of 59% of the girls in the free project entered into a STEM field, which is really some remarkable results. And then of our group, 33% enrolled in college and entered into a non-STEM field. So the results from this study are quite amazing in terms of the interest that was built, and we're going to show you a little bit more about that. Now I'd like to shift from what the research questions were and the interest level of the girls and move into what did we do? What was the free project? And this toolkit that I'm going to introduce is actually a website that we'll switch to in a minute, and it was designed to basically document what the girls did in terms of how they wanted to learn about engineering, what they learned about it, and how their decisions played out, with the idea that if you would like to develop a free program in your area, that you could follow this outline and possibly get some good background on setting it up. So I'm going to shift to the website here, and if you want to come along, that will be great. And this website URL you will find on your, at the end of the program, you'll be able to get to this as well, and it's a live document. So here's what the toolkit is. It's an overview of what we did so that you can share this with others that might be stakeholders, or you need to share this to introduce the project. And we've got a little bit of background information. The project was supported by the National Science Foundation. It's a project that takes about 2.5 years of involvement, and I think that's very key as young women are considering their careers. It's not one of those projects where you go in and do a program and then leave, but it's a 2.5-year commitment as they explore engineering as a career option, learn more about it, actually in our case do it, and then support their transition into college. 63% of what our group was, largely first-generation college student, ended up enrolling in college, and you can see there also the free project website is some more information on what we did with the project. Then we've got a little overview here of and actually this runs along the sides, the links that you can go to the various information. We also include information here about who should use the toolkit, the materials that we have, we've got the documents that we used, we've got the data from the research-based intervention that was developed, and then we've got who can use this toolkit. And clearly, as I mentioned before, it's designed for girls beginning their 10th grade year and continues through high school graduation. The participants should be taking college prep courses and performing satisfactorily in those courses, though we did have a couple girls in the study whose teachers supported their involvement and told us that, this really could make a difference for this young woman, and I'd like you to it could be the inspiration and that she needs. And in fact, we accepted those girls into the study, and they actually blossomed, and so it was a very good experience for all involved. The free program can be also used at the community college setting, and also for those that are undecided about their program of study. It does take some leadership, and so the leaders could be teachers, parents, interested adults, and actually college women could also be very, very effective. In fact, when we were implementing the program, our graduate students were involved and worked very closely with the girls, and that was something that the girls really appreciated, and actually the great benefit to the college women as well. And here at the bottom here is the free site that I mentioned earlier. The overview of the program is under the second tab here, and it talks about where we were from in terms of the researchers, a little bit about where the backgrounds of the girls that I've already mentioned, and how the intervention was designed. It was a participatory action research methodology is what we employed here, and what that means is that the girls were co-researchers with us. They explored together, we explored engineering, and actually the research team supported the ideas that the girls had in terms of how they would learn about engineering, and we facilitated if they needed, for instance, they wanted to job shadow, they wanted to contact engineers, they wanted to go on field trips, and they made all of those, brought up those ideas, and we did arranged the logistics for that. And what we found was after 1.5 years of the study, it was not hard at all to get girls interested in participating in free. 56% of them, as I mentioned earlier, were still participating in the study at the end of their second year. The goals of the free project were designed to spark and sustain academically talented minority girls' interest in engineering, and the research portion of this explored how young women come to know engineering. The objectives are to motivate girls to think seriously about engineering as a career and to research it accordingly. So that's a little bit of an overview of what the free program was and how it was implemented. The communication hub was absolutely critical. What you're seeing here in the middle of your page is the basically wiki-based page that we developed. Now this is, need to remember that we developed this in 2007, which was pre-Facebook. In fact, now the study, as we're conducting it, we have a Facebook group page that we have migrated to. But in the early stages, it was this wiki-type website that was developed. And actually, the research team is all we did here was develop the shell. And the girls posted information that they felt was interesting and important to know about engineering. So this site ended up being, you know, what the girls thought about engineering, and so we were able to do quite a bit of analysis on that, and it was very helpful for them to share with one another what they were learning and the excitement of that, and so it was a tool that was quite instrumental in their both exploration and then inspiring them to pursue some of these fields. Then we also, in order to get, on the research side of things, in order to get the data from the girls, what they were researching, how they were talking about it, what they were learning, we needed to collect that data. And so they not only had to research it, and we collected it, and so we ended up needing to actually give them smartphones. And BlackBerries were just coming out at the time, and that's what they used then to explore, to do their research and exploration, and then also to share the information with one another. And then we collected that data on a server, and that provided the data for us to make some of the claims that you're going to hear about later and what was important to know about engineering and what they came to know about it. So then the fourth tab here is the program content for the free project. And the only thing that the girls, that we actually dictated, if you will, for the girls as the study was launched, the project was launched, was the introduction to engineering. And we went to a career fair in order for them to see all of the various engineering fields that they could look into and to better understand the breadth of fields in engineering. And so on the Iowa campus, we went to the Iowa State College Career Fair that they hold a couple times a year. And the girls, in preparation for attending that event, they developed a script of questions that they were interested in asking the industry representatives. And we actually went to these career fairs. They wanted to go to them the second and third year as well. And so we went all 3 years, and it was very interesting as their scripts, their interview scripts changed over time. You could see their development and understanding and their curiosity and the sophistication in their questions as they became much more knowledgeable about engineering and started to identify some of their interests of their own. And so the girls, they went to the career fair, they audio taped the interviews the questions and the interviews that they had with the representatives there, and they walked away from that experience with just in awe that they had no idea that engineering was had as many opportunities as it did, and my goodness sakes, I certainly, will be able to find something in this field that I'll like to do. In phase one, they also wanted to do some special trips, and so we have here at the bottom the meetings that we had once a month, and we have basically what we did at those meetings. So in February, now I don't know that, I ran into that earlier. Let me go back to, here we go. Excuse me, the links to this website, I need to go back and look at those. They are hot linked, and so you can go to these protocols, which are the summary of what we did in these meetings with the girls. And so if you were to implement a program like this, you would have access to the questions that we asked, the activities that the girls did, and then we also had a very important component here was the journaling that the girls did. It was certainly a way for us to gather data, but it also helped with their self-actualization and the ideas about the world of work in themselves and how they might fit into it. So we've got, in terms of the program content, we've got phase 1 was researching engineering and learning more about it. And that quickly evolved into the second year when the girls were juniors in high school. They really wanted to do engineering. They didn't want to research it anymore, but they wanted to go out and actually do it. And so we supported their exploration into identifying different kinds of engineering projects and actually doing those engineering projects. And then the slides coming up next share with you, that was fascinating, the types of projects that they wanted to do and what they did with them. And so I'll share that with you here in a minute. And then a very important point, and certainly the study took a new direction in their senior year. Their senior year turned from a time of exploring engineering to, okay, now I got to get to college. And this is a piece, and remember that we had a large number of first-generation college students in this group, and even the girls that had parents who had gone to college, there was a real need to help them figure out the process, the applications, how they would look at various colleges now that they had an idea of what they might want to study, how they would go about visiting those colleges, how they would select it, or in the field we call the college knowledge piece. The logistics and the information that provided the avenue by which girls could enroll in college. And we ended up spending in the third year of this project a lot of time facilitating, identifying scholarships, filling out applications, helping girls figure out housing. That was a piece that, while in the early years of the study we had clearly piqued their interest in going to college and then studying engineering, but getting there was a huge piece. And I think that's one thing that in many of the programs great programs that we offer about in the engineering fields, we forget about that last piece that's getting there, and that was what the girls wanted to focus on, and so that is exactly what we focused on that third year. The outcomes of the project, I shared these first charts with you, tables earlier, in terms of the retention in this study and how many went into engineering and how their career interest trajectory changed. And then we also cite here, it was largely a qualitative study, and so we have cited here some of the main findings that I'm going to cover with you in more detail, but I just wanted to show you here that we do have it on the website if the website were something that you wanted to review with people that you work with. So these are the findings from the study, and I'm going to go over those in detail in just a moment. And then, of course, we have included our evaluation program plan that you also could use should you implement a program like this. And then we've also listed the sources that the girls identified as were very helpful. Now, these were sites that the girls identified a couple years ago, and I think we will update this to share with you there's been many, many more things that have come out since this phase of the project is over. So that's a little bit about the toolkit, and I hope that that it's useful to you. We also have a discussion board here, and this is actually the phase of the project where we're at right now. This originally, as I mentioned, was a research project, and the results were stunning, so now it was an effective intervention. And so now we're looking at ways that we might be able to scale it up and offer these programs in communities that would be interested in implementing them, which is one of the reasons why I'm sharing the information with you today. I do think, though, in order to have the success that we had, the implementation probably needs some support, formal support from those that have done it in the past, at least in its early stages, and so we have anticipated that. We don't have the funding yet in place for it, but we also have a place here for the community discussion that we could share our ideas and experiences and challenges in implementing a program such as this. So with that, I want to share with you what some of the outcomes and findings from this, conducting this research project or this intervention. So scrolling down here a little bit more, come on down with me, yep, there we go. So one thing that was amazing was 65% of the girls who started in free continued in free. As I mentioned earlier, this time in their lives with the busyness, that was amazing. The projects, when it came to the second year, their projects, their ideas for projects came very quickly and with a lot of detail. The language that they were using, very scientific, technical language, that was a dramatic change in their early understanding and then how they spoke about and discussed, and you'll see it exemplified here in just a minute. The projects, the girls nominated over 60 projects that they wanted to do, and they fell into these 9 general categories. And nearly 40% at the end of the program were considering engineering. Now, you remember I said 22% entered engineering in college, yet their senior year, the end of their senior year, 40% were seriously considering it, and that includes 24 who really had no interest in the beginning. So that was very high. Why the drop in half? This is a phenomena that we're looking into. Why was there such a high number who were right there, ready to make the decision to enter and didn't? And so some of our study is looking at that more closely. So this is always very interesting. The types of projects that they chose to, or at least they were considering exploring. Some were from Colorado. I kind of wonder if maybe the powdered water, there were some hikers in the group, they wanted to do that, look into that. Headbands that change color, very practical ideas. The headbands that could match a number of things and their hair colors as they changed them. You can see here they were starting to drive cars, and so let's help find the keys. That's something that we can do. And a remote control so that we can open garage doors was something that they wanted to investigate. And then we love this one, adjustable shoe heels. They wanted to be able to go from flats to stilettos in seconds, and so that was a project that a group looked into and designed. We had another group that was very interested, or the types of ideas that emerged were those that were of personal interest and family or community needs in engineering. And I found this to be interesting, that certainly differently abled projects were common in this area, as well as just some very practical things, alternative to pesticides. We saw quite a few projects that were environmentally friendly and sound. We had girls that were looking at safety issues, and this one I love too. Steel-toed nonstick shoes for girls. They could see that if you're working in the field and needed to have footwear that was protective, you know, those steel-toed shoes just aren't cutting it. They just, aren't that fashionable. So let's do something that makes them at least for girls. And so there was a group that explored that. And then I think this was the protective bodysuit for kids. I got to wonder if that maybe wasn't some of the extreme sports coming out, that they wanted to have something that would keep them safe. So those projects were in the safety area. And then, of course, we had some that were in the virtual area. Mars Station. This one we had a young woman who had a baby, and so there was some interest in what do translating all those oohs and coos. And in fact, the project that the young woman that had the child did was called a Robo Nanny, and she created a robot, or built a robot that could work and entertain her toddler while she was doing her homework and she needed to care for him. So they were very practical projects that the girls did, and as you can see from all of these, they were very much relevant to their worlds and of interest to their worlds. Here's one kind of, as we looked at the data from the projects, this is one of the themes that was very, very prominent. At the end of year two, the girls were commenting on how much more interested they were in pursuing engineering and how much more they knew about engineering after doing the projects. And Chelsea from Ohio says, in designing the playground, we incorporated different types of engineering, computer, mechanical, and civil engineering. It was especially interesting to do the 3D computer design that our mentor helped us with. The project helped me to realize that I really could be an engineer, and now I really want to major in engineering in college. And here you can see a picture also of, this was a dream home that this group of girls designed. They chose a software program, they identified a software program, they did the design on the computer, and then you can see actually the 3D, the mock-up that they did in terms of sharing it, presenting it then with the class. Another girl, Sophia from Colorado, writes, the best part about our project was when we actually began making it. When we started working on our shirts and putting the lights together, it brought all the pieces of our research together. And it wasn't just a design on paper anymore. We actually made something we could use, feel, and actually see it work. I'm a lot more interested in engineering now than I was a year ago because I got to see how many different things that you can do. And I think this was also a key point here, that they got to see how many different things that they could do. Oftentimes with programming that we offer, or even a visit that girls can come and visit campus, they get, or a job shadow, they get one glimpse of what it is, and if they don't like it, then they associate that with, I don't like this field. There's not anything of interest to me. And so with the variety of projects that the girls did, and they were always sharing and troubleshooting discussion together, they really were learning being exposed to a variety of different engineering fields, and that turned out to be actually a very important piece in terms of them finding something that was of interest to them and something that they could be competent in. There were also a few that went online and of course looked for the contests that they could get involved with. And then I want to share with you a real special one here. This young woman, we have a videotape here of solar-powered jewelry, or in this case it's a belt buckle. So I'm going to take you to an introduction of that. And this was a young woman in Colorado who wanted to, oops, that's not the one. Oh, can I get there? Oh, let me go back. Excuse me, I clicked on the wrong one. Let's see.
Monica, can you just click on the tab you need up there?
Oh, yes, I can. Thank you.
Over?
No?
There you go.
Here we go. So here's Patty on her solar belt.
This is Mimi. I just want to remind everyone that when we watch this video on the Microsoft Office Live Meeting software, it will scroll and it will look a little bit disjointed, but when you actually go to the free website and watch this video there, it runs perfectly. So I just wanted to say that before we headed off to take a look at this. Sorry to interrupt, Monica.
Thank you very much, Mimi.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. Patty and her solar belt.
At school. I was very closed up at school. And like I thanks to the program, I opened up, and thanks to the program, my mind just started going all over the place, and that's where my idea of the solar belt came from. Never, like, if you would have asked me before the free program what I could build, I would just look at you and be like, nothing? Why would I want to build something? These are the 7 solar cells that are mounted on there. I sewed the solar cells on there. Pretty bad job. I don't so. And the wiring is in a series circuit. I was running out of time, so I had to think of whether I really wanted to waste my time on a parallel circuit and running the risk it wouldn't work. It would take a lot more time for me to fix it than a series circuit. And it's basically the positive current is this one, and it's going through the small wires, through these small wires, and then it goes around through this big, large black wire, and that's the negative. And it goes, on one side it's connected to an MP3, MP4 charger, and this is an iPod charger. It was originally supposed to charge up an iPod. That idea kind of failed because the iPod has I think a 12-volt indicator, and it wasn't producing enough power to turn the indicator on, so it was charging. You just couldn't tell it was charging. The two things that what's the word? I just forgot it. Oh, that determines the efficiency of the solar cells is temperature and direct sunlight. So they can have direct sunlight, but if it's too hot, they won't be working correctly. This is my first and hopefully not my last engineering project. I'm planning on patenting the idea.
So that's kind of a great example of the transformation that occurred towards the end of this project, and just a great, and that young woman actually even today is still is in the process of patenting that idea. So with that, I'd like to just finish up with some of the findings from this study and some of the things that we believe, if this toolkit were implemented in a similar way that we did with the girls, that you could, the outcomes that you could expect. And one very important, prominent finding that we had was high school was not too late to spark interest in engineering among these talented girls. It was not difficult at all. Despite their limited time, despite their busy lives, they still found time to be a part of this project and consider engineering, and many of them ended up pursuing some sort of STEM field. Chloe says, I learned there's a lot more to engineering than I thought there was, like you can work with animals and agriculture. I thought it was just math and machines all the time, but you really get to work with people. And that was a very important, for many, many of the girls, understanding that they arrived at. Another one was that the free participants became very curious about engineering as a field of employment and career development. They were thinking very thoughtfully about it. Rose writes, I realized how much time and devotion I need for a career in engineering. I don't mean that in a lazy way. I would just like to see if I'm cut out for a job such as engineering. And some of this stemmed from, as you go back to the data and the conversations and what the girls learned and what people told them about engineering, much of the time the commitment and the rigor, the time commitment, the long hours were emphasized, and those in the engineering field are actually now looking at that, knowing that this life balance, work-life balance is very important. And the girls were picking up on the fact that it may not be at the level that they were comfortable with, and they didn't mean that in a lazy way. They were just acknowledging that possibility and wanting to look more into it. So that was also a prominent finding. Thirdly, as their interest grew, they started to wonder why there were so few women in engineering. And I actually love this quote from Remy. It says, my view of engineering has changed over the past year based on the number of women involved. The main advantage to me is the fact that the field lacks numbers of women. the advantages to becoming an engineer are countless because of the demand. I think that my generation has many more women who are interested in the field of engineering, so the number of women should increase. Now, clearly, that's hopeful, and I think there's possibilities there. The young woman's thoughts about engineering very much evolved over time. An example of that evolution is captured in Samantha's comments. I never really considered engineering as a potential career possibility until free came along. I'd always enjoyed science and most of math, and I thought mostly about using this interest to pursue a career in the sciences. Although I really enjoy solving puzzles and cardboard and real-life ones, building wasn't a special interest of mine, which is what I previously considered engineering to be. I used to think that I knew what I wanted to pursue in engineering, but lately the decision has become much more infinite as more options show themselves. So the world really opened up to these young women, and as they explored engineering and did these projects, their competence and proficiencies also increased. And so we, in the end, asked them, you know, at graduation, were those that are pursuing engineering or seriously considering engineering attributed to the free project? And they said without question it was in a large part contributed to the free project. My view of engineering changed big time, Angel said. I used to see engineering as a boring career, having to do a lot of math and papers, etc. It turns out that engineering is much more than that. Now I see it as a career of exploring with your ideas, using your brains, your skills, and everything else to create and invent and discover many things. So this study, in the end, what started as let's just find out what's going on here, turned into something that there's great hope and there's great potential and there's great possibilities for more women to consider engineering as a career option. Many, many of them, especially in the demographic populations that we were working in, had no idea what engineering was. So in essence, how could they choose it if they didn't know anything about it? And so I think that certainly provides us with this call and the reality that high-achieving young girls know little or nothing about engineering, so therefore they can't choose it. But that also means that opportunity abounds, and together we all, continuing to work on this, can make a difference. So I think here's some info, the websites, and these will be posted on the NAEP webinar website. You can get more information about the free project and how it is developing. Now it has moved into following, as I mentioned earlier, the girls into college and looking at the social capital that they brought to college and used in college and trying to better understand what happened in that gap between those 40% that were considering engineering and then the 22% that chose it, and of course following them into college, and most of them are staying in the STEM fields. Thank you very much. There's a shot of all of us, or some of us I should say, and the contact information is the last slide. On behalf of my research team and Margaret Eisenhart at Colorado University and Jill Bizajaninski at Ohio State, we thank you for your time, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, Monica, thank you. That was amazing. Every time I hear about this project, I get really excited about it. So thank you. You know, you've got some great resources there. The results of this work are incredible, and we do have some questions. So let's start in on them. One of the participants asked, I run an after-school science club for Hispanic girls. How early do you think we should start encouraging girls to pursue engineering? I've noticed that middle school girls don't always sign up for my club. Yeah, I think that gets to the semantics.
it's the word engineering, they don't necessarily know what engineering is at that stage, especially in middle school, but we're going to do math and science, and engineering, of course, is the application of math and science. And so kind of it gets to the introduction. It's as my son said a few years ago when he was about that age, well, why would I want to spend my time doing that when I don't even know what it is? But they do know what math and science is, and they also, especially in the elementary or in the middle school ages and even older too, certainly, science in particular and math as well can be fascinating and fun. So introducing it in a way that is more elementary and developmental. I mean, another story that kind of illustrates this point of how to introduce it. In the pilot study of the FREE project, the girls wanted to visit, do a field trip. So we took them to John Deere, actually, as a trip, and that was, we chose that because I had some colleagues who were there, and the women that worked at John Deere just did an absolutely incredible job of talking about work-life balance and how it was a great place to work for a woman and the exciting types of work that they had to do. And then we went on a field trip in their plant, and the plant was actually where they build the heavy equipment. So it was laden, it was relatively, you know, it was a shop. The smell of grease was quite strong, and actually paint, because they were painting on that particular day as well. And it was just amazing to me, the girls, they weren't quite ready to see that type of engineering, and how they very quickly decided, oh, I don't think I'm interested in this, because it was, you know, it wasn't, you know, it was dirty, or it wasn't the type of work they imagined. And so I thought about that for a while, and I thought about the introduction. I thought it's like taking a book for a young child where, you know, they're reading and just learning how to read and giving them a chapter book. They're not ready for the chapter book. They need to, you know, learn the how to sound up the words and not how to read a chapter book. So really that implementation developmentally, being sensitive to that and talking in terms that they know, and then sharing with them the more sophisticated or advanced terminology, it can work quite well in terms of the introduction. So starting at that age with science and math and engineering can be a part of that.
Another question sort of revolves around the role that parents played. And I noticed also in the video that it was great. The young woman's family was sitting on the couch behind her as she was being interviewed. So, you know, we often hear about the influence of parents, but in cases where they're not engineers, what role did these parents play in encouraging their daughters to get involved?
That was a pretty neat experience, actually. As you recall, the vast majority of our young women and most of mine, the Ohio group, there were not, actually I don't think there were any first-generation college students. So that site had some different dynamics in terms of involving the parents. In my site, we had many of the parents worked several jobs, and so they didn't have the time to take the girls on college visits or even to help with the driving. They were you know, caring for younger siblings and were working. So, but they were very grateful that their daughters had this opportunity, and so they were very much supportive of the work that we were doing, but they were themselves unable to be a participant in it because of the other demands that they had on their time. But they were very respectful and very appreciative of working with them. And the girls talked about in the interviews, you know, they were very excited about this, but oftentimes, and when they would get excited about college, they'd go home, and many of them talked about their parents wouldn't understand what they were talking about because they had not had that lived experience, but nonetheless they were very supportive, and it was a dream that they were living out through
their through their daughters, that their daughters may get to go to college. And so they were supportive emotionally, without question, in terms of that cultural capital and social capital. They were not able to provide that background, most of the girls in my case, but they were definitely a player, and there's been what I've seen in a shift in parents' perceptions of engineering. There was a time when oftentimes parents would discourage their daughters from going into engineering because of the demands of the job, and in my work I've seen dramatic shifts in that, and parents most definitely supporting it.
There's a question here about was there any kind of pre-engineering curriculum like Project Lead the Way or any other project-based curriculum that was used in conjunction with the pre-projects? Or do you have any suggestions about resources that people might be able to use for this sort of thing?
Well, actually, no, there wasn't, because as you recall, this was a research study, actually, where the girls developed on their own what they wanted to learn about it and where they got the information. So they were quite resourceful. In fact, just yesterday gave a presentation on this with one of the free young women, and she had an aha moment. She said, one of the reasons this was so fun was you guys asked a lot of questions, but you didn't ever tell us what to do. We figured that out, and we got to do what we wanted to do. And so they sought out the resources. Now, they did go to, when they were doing the engineering projects, they oftentimes sought advice from those that were either parents that knew how to construct something, or also engineers, and those individuals were drawing on their backgrounds. They did find, as I mentioned earlier on the website, they shared different resources there, websites that, like Engineer Your Life was a favorite one. In terms of the Project Lead the Way, this was, again, done in 2007 to 2010, and none of them were involved in Project Lead the Way classes, though they did try and connect as best they could class projects, especially in their chemistry classes. I noticed a number of them were connecting concepts that were taught there with projects, and then projects that they needed to do. So they were working on that, but we did not use any formal curriculum, because this, again, was driven from the girls, where they wanted to go and what they wanted to do with it. And I think, in terms of that, that's the way it would continue to be the methods that we would continue to use, is certainly offer or provide some of the curriculum that exists that they can choose from, but they are the ones that go and do that, as opposed to the coordinators or the leaders, if you will, imposing those curriculum, because this really comes from them, and that was how the interest continued to increase, I believe, and the data bears that out.
Right. Do you want to talk at all about SciGirls, the projects that are available through that? You mentioned this earlier, actually in a discussion that we had before this webinar started, about the SciGirls series, and if you want to watch it, it's online at www.scigirls.org. The girls engineered a giant mechanical puppet for a community parade, a miniature wind farm, electronic fashions, and a way to empty recycled yogurt cups, that sort of thing. Their activity guides are currently available through SciGirls as well. And those are available at www.pbs.org/teachers/SciGirls. So it's another resource that might be good for anyone who's looking for resources around projects to use with girls.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's the amazing thing that is just so encouraging about all of this, that there are so many more resources available that have come out in the last couple of years, and we did this work now 3 years ago, so they were much more limited at that point in time, and it would be very interesting to see what girls would do now with these resources that they would have. Would they do things on their own, or how would they go about that? It may increase the because some were stymied a little bit. And, you know, they would have preferred something that they could have followed as opposed to created on their own. So, yeah, those Side Girls in particular is a great resource.
Well, we've slightly exceeded our 1-hour limit for the webinar, and I think that the amount of information, Monica, that you shared with us is fantastic. I would like to encourage everyone who's listening to take some time, go check out the website, the toolkit, and all the great resources that are there. And, of course, contact Monica if you have any additional questions or if you're interested in considering implementing the free project in your community. When this webinar is completed, if you're watching it in the archived version, Greg, do you want to say anything about the evaluation?
Okay. Let's see. For the archived webinar, please refer back to your registration email with a link and confirmation number to the survey. So
Great. We want to try to get feedback from everyone about the evaluation. That's really important. And Monica, thank you so much for doing this with us. We really appreciate your energy and your effort, and we look forward to more free projects all over the place.
That will be fun. Thank you very much, and don't hesitate to call if you've got questions about the study or the work that we've done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you, everyone.